Been a busy 12 hours in the presidential politics world. Good morning. Welcome in. Things are starting to shape up on a Thursday morning. It's great to be here with you. And, geez, this is the kind of stuff we've been waiting for the last, 2 months. You know, nothing's happened for the most part over the last 2 months in presidential politics world. So we haven't really spent a lot of time on it. But finally, there's some moving and shaking. First off, Chris Christie does what I have been suggesting that he do for weeks, and that is drop out of the presidential race. Go away. Go back to ABC. Be a contributor. Talk about how Donald Trump's the worst thing to ever happen, even though you would have gladly worked for him had he given you the job of Attorney General. You would have done it, Chris. We all know it. But now you're making money doing the opposite. So go back to doing that. It's better for all of us.
I like how these guys wilt once you get them out of the Eastern time zone. Right. Bring them out here to Iowa.
Yeah, especially Christie. Just too much for him, you know.
Yeah.
So Christie's out. He drops out yesterday, and good. You know, the thing about Christie is his whole campaign was revenge against Trump. Now, he's allowed to run a campaign however he wants to. But he was actually serious about making sure Donald Trump did not become president again. Then guess what? You have to drop out because your theoretical voters, all 7 of them in Iowa, and there's a few more up in New Hampshire, would go to Nikki Haley. I mean, in New Hampshire, he's, polling around 10%. So theoretically, those people go to Nikki Haley, I would imagine. And maybe that means this presidential primary drags on a little longer. If she ends up winning New Hampshire, goes to South Carolina where she was the governor, and at least prolongs this thing depending on what Ron DeSantis ends up doing after Iowa on Monday. But he had to do it. If he was serious about actually trying to stop Trump, that's why this whole thing became a vanity campaign after a period of time. It was all about Chris Christie's ego. So he did it, took him long enough. Should have done it before the holidays, but whatever. It's over. He's done. Now, more interestingly, he got caught on a hot mic in New Hampshire yesterday afternoon as he was dropping out. And take a listen to this hot mic moment for Chris Christie as he's talking to, it sounds like a reporter, about how Nikki Haley's ultimately got no chance. And then he starts to say something about Ron DeSantis when the microphone cuts out.
People don't want to hear it, Wayne. They don't want to hear it. We know we're right, but they don't want to hear it.
Right.
And there's, we couldn't have been any clearer.
Right.
We couldn't have been any more direct or worked any harder. So,
And let's not forget she spent $68 million.
Yeah.
I mean, we spent
Well, when you give land to China and places like that.
Yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, she spent $68 million so far, just on TV. Spent $68 million so far, $59 million by DeSantis, and we spent 12. I mean, who's punching above their weight and who's getting a return on their investment, And she's going to get smoked, and you and I both know it. She's not up to this.
she hasn't even
And she's still 20 points behind Trump in New Hampshire, right?
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
And he's still going to carry Iowa, right?
Yes. Oh, I talked to DeSantis called me, petrified that I would.
He's probably getting out after Iowa.
Well,
And then it cuts out. And I wanted to hear the follow-up so bad when he said DeSantis called me and he was petrified, ... And then it tails off and you hear a reporter or somebody else say, he's probably going to drop out after Iowa, right? And then, boom, the mic cuts. I don't know what he was going to say, obviously. No idea what DeSantis theoretically would be petrified of. If I'm any of these folks, if I'm Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, I wouldn't want Chris Christie's endorsement. I wouldn't want it. Nikki Haley doesn't need it. Her voters, or I should say Christie's voters, are going to probably go to Nikki Haley anyway. Chris Christie doesn't have to tell them to do that. But if she's serious about potentially winning the nomination, which once again, I am in no way predicting. I'm sitting here today, 98% chance Donald Trump's the nominee. It's not even close. But if she's serious about trying to pull off the improbable, then she should not want Christie's endorsement. Because Christie's whole campaign is about how Trump is awful. Trump is terrible. And in the end, if she wants to be the nominee and try to unify the party to some degree, then guess what? She's going to have to get voters who like Donald Trump. She's going to have to do it. So you just can't sit there and say, well, I'll take Chris's voters and I'll take his endorsement. No, because it was all about hatred of Trump for the most part. It wasn't about anything more than that. There wasn't really policy that Christie was sound on or promoting. It was Donald Trump's the worst. He's, a criminal, and I'm the only one that's going to say it. That was Chris Christie. Now, you might like that, but if you're serious about being the nominee for the entire party, there's no point in slapping backs with that guy. So I don't know what Ron DeSantis would have been afraid of Chris Christie potentially saying, but you heard the hot mic moment there, and you heard it trail off and then get cut right at that very moment. So now you sit here and you're like, okay, we're going into Iowa on Monday. And by the way, Jeff Angelo of WHO Radio in Des Moines is going to be here at 8:30 this morning. So don't want to miss that conversation with him. We'll get the latest on what's happening on the ground there in Iowa. But you have Monday coming up. It is going to be Iowa Caucus Day, their primary, the first one of the 2024 cycle. And it's overwhelmingly expected to be Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis has put together a good ground campaign, but it doesn't look like anyone is going to be able to beat Donald Trump. And, last night you had these dueling debates going on. You had, well, not debates. You had one debate and one town hall. You had Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley debating on CNN. And then you had Donald Trump doing a town hall on Fox News. And I'll tell you, I know that Donald Trump is just, listen, the guy's in his late 70s. He's not what he was 8 years ago. But he's still, when I watched him compared to what you see with Joe Biden, it truly is night and day. Donald Trump should be begging Joe Biden to get on a debate stage if that time does actually come, assuming he wins the nomination. Because Trump last night, regardless of what you think of him personally, he was coherent. He had personality. He still is funny. Now, he's lost a little bit off the fastball from 2016, I will admit that. But here's the thing. I think today, the gap from 70 to 80 is what we used to think of being 60 to 70. I don't notice a lot of difference. Like, my parents were in their later 60s. I don't notice a lot of difference between them now and when they were 60. But I think 70 to 80 is now where you kind of start to see a change in people appearing or coming across like, okay, they're aging here if they take care of themselves and whatnot. But there's a lot of people that I'm looking at now and saying, well, Trump, yeah, is he what he was in 2016? No. But is he still competent, sharp, witty, there, unlike the other guy?
Come on, man.
Very much so, John.
Well, it's kind of like sports. I think he's been off the circuit a little. He'll get his fastball back once he comes into D.C. politics, right?
It's like a musician. The first couple stops on the tour, they got to get their voice back and start to feel good again.
Now, I might be alone in this, but I think Christie has a good future. The job I'd like to see him in is as Norm in the Broadway adaptation of Cheers. I think he would be good for that.
All right.
Hey, Cliff.
There you go. You and Bill, you got the 6 o'clock reference in going back decades. Bill O'Reilly's going to have his coming up in an hour. That's a good job there, John Anthony.
All right, sir.
Well done. I like that. 6:14. Good morning. It's great to be here with you as we roll through a Thursday. Mayor Lucas is coming up in just over an hour at 7:35 this morning. This was funny, though, yesterday. Scary but funny. Someone on TV saying that if Trump is elected, journalists and, let's see, who is it? Journalists are going to start disappearing and LGBTQ people are going to start disappearing. And I just sit here and say, how do they give these people a microphone? We'll tell you who that was next on 95.7 FM KCMO. Well, some breaking news, usually not coming down this early in the morning. Bill Belichick leaving the New England Patriots after 24 seasons. Just getting this push notification on my phone here from ESPN. Bill Belichick and the Patriots are expected to part ways today after 24 seasons together. As ESPN writes, ending an unmatched run in NFL history that includes 6 Super Bowl titles. So Bill Belichick is out in New England, and we'll see what the future holds up there. Some speculation that Mike Vrabel, who just got fired by the Titans, could be going back to his old stomping grounds where he used to play, John.
I don't imagine Belichick's going to be the color analyst on any broadcast soon, though.
No, I hope not.
Right.
I mean, I know that they're lacking talent, but he would be awful. Mm-hmm. Could you imagine his monotone, mumbling analysis? That would be awful. Ooh.
Oh, I see you wore the blue sweatshirt.
I mean, some thought that he could end up going to L.A., but it's like, Bill, it's kind of like politicians. Bill Belichick is 70-something years old. Like, at what point do you enjoy the tens of millions of dollars, probably hundreds at this point, that you've made at 71? Like, if I'm Bill Belichick, I'm like, all right, I probably have 10 years where I can do whatever I want. Maybe more if you're healthy and lucky and fortunate. But you got 10 years to do whatever you want in life. You going to go coach more football?
I was going to say, if you miss the rush, I'm sure there's some big wheeling dealing fantasy football leagues out there.
Yeah.
You can drop some big bucks in there if you miss the adrenaline.
I mean, just, go live life, man. Or if you want to do adrenaline, I don't know, go fish, go golf. I mean, you know, $100 a hole here and there. Have some fun.
I'm coaching my grandson's team.
Yeah, do that. Pee Wee flag football. I mean, something else. Now, speaking of people that should retire who are way too old to be doing this, Whoopi Goldberg is 68. And it's time for her to hang him up, too. So Whoopi yesterday on The View, take a listen to what she says about how and this is the stuff they were saying in 2016, but now they're saying it again. The problem is, we've seen Trump for 4 years literally be the president. He didn't do any of these things that they suggest he is going to do the first time around. But for some reason, people are supposed to be gullible enough to buy it this time around. Like, you can hate Trump, but then you should also be able to admit that what Whoopi Goldberg says here is just completely insane.
Either you want it to work forward thinking, you want everybody to have the ability to say how they feel, what they want to move forward, or you don't. Or you want somebody who says, I'm going to be on day one, I'm going to be a dictator. Who says it to you, tells you, I'm going to put you people away. I'm going to take all the journalists, I'm going to take all the gay folks, I'm going to move you all around and disappear you. If that's the country you want, you know who to vote for. If that's not the country you want, you have to make a decision.
All right, that is Whoopi Goldberg talking about Trump being a dictator and everything that he allegedly is going to do when he gets back in the office. Where do these people get this stuff? That's what I wonder. Where do they come up with these things? Like, is Whoopi Goldberg waking up at 3 a.m. like I did this morning and saying, oh, my goodness, I can't believe this guy Trump, he wants to be a dictator. He's going to be a dictator for life. Now, the irony is that tyranny is creeping its way into the West, but Trump's not at the forefront. You want to talk about how journalists are going to be treated in the West? Did you see what happened in Canada in the last couple of days? Literally, they are arresting journalists in Canada. No. That's actually happening. If you didn't see it, that is a real thing. You had in Canada a journalist get arrested. And it happened like 2 days ago. And no one really talked anything about it. The guy's name is David Menzies, and he was arrested on camera after trying to ask questions to Canada Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, on the streets of Ontario. He's literally on public streets on Monday afternoon. He is asking the Canadian Deputy Prime Minister a question, and then he gets arrested by Canadian police. Right there. For asking questions to the deputy prime minister. The police officer lies and says that David assaulted him. You can watch the video for yourself and you can see that is what communist countries do. They arrest their political enemies and they also arrest free press. Yet we spent 40 years with Trump in the White House, and trust me, there were a lot of things said by the press that were completely factually inaccurate and incredibly nasty. And I don't recall Trump jailing any of them. I don't recall him throwing any of them in prison. You can say a lot of things about the guy, and you can have a lot of critiques of the guy, but for Whoopi Goldberg to go on her show on ABC and say stuff like that, I mean, where are the boss? Is anybody in charge there? Where's Bob Iger, head of Disney? Is anybody in charge, John?
Well, if any of that were true, I would have thought we wouldn't have had so much Jim Costa there during the years. Right?
Oh, yes.
Right?
I forgot about that clown over on CNN.
Well, sure, and every day, front and center.
Yeah, and Trump gave him the time of day. Now, he would give it back to him. He'd goof on him, right? He'd rip on him, but
he didn't disappear.
He did not disappear. No, in fact, he got his own show on CNN. It's funny how that works. He actually got a promotion and theoretically made more money for being a thorn in Donald Trump's side. It's isn't it interesting how that works? But if you hear Whoopi Goldberg talk, it's like, oh, journalists are going to disappear and Trump's going to be a dictator and oh my goodness, we're all going to go to hell in a handbasket. You better watch out. It's like, well, we just lived it. And yeah, there were annoying parts of it, but policy-wise, it was pretty good. And on top of that, no one disappeared.
We may have to bring in Ms. Goldberg for some questioning. What does she know about these things that she's speaking of?
Well, yeah, I would be very curious on that as well.
Right?
Let's have that conversation. 913-408-7957. Good to be here on a Thursday morning. I would say it's chilly, but this is going to be considered balmy here come about Saturday and Sunday morning. So, you know what? 20 degrees, that's nothing as we get it rolling. Coming up next, could the weather for the Chiefs game actually help fans who haven't been to a game in a long time go to a game? I'll explain that next. All anybody in this town seems to be talking about is how cold Saturday is going to be for the Chiefs-Dolphins game, with highs expected to be right around 7 degrees, and the lows will get below zero, likely by the end of the game, with kickoff set for 7:15. So Kevin Keatsman and I were having this conversation yesterday, and Kevin brought up something that I wonder if this works for Chiefs fans in a way that many of us would not have originally thought as we bemoan the weather forecast all week. Here's what Kevin had to say yesterday. I was asking him about the Chiefs game, taking on the Dolphins, the game being on Peacock as well, and what the implications of that are this weekend.
NBC Universal will put out some sort of a statement that, we set a record on Peacock. It was the highest rated thing. That's probably the case. This will get a fraction of the other 5 playoff games this weekend. Here's the good news. In Kansas City, we don't care. We're going to be able to see it. It's going to get a big rating because nobody's going to the game, Pete.
Yeah.
There's going to be empty seats. Nobody's going. Everybody's going to stay home and watch on TV. The Chiefs are the most overexposed sports entity in America. And you can make an argument that a lot of people around America are kind of tired of seeing the Chiefs right now. But we saw that 5 of the 10 top TV shows in America last year in 2023, highest rated television programs, 5 of the top 10 were Kansas City Chiefs football games. So there's no lack of ratings here for the Chiefs. If they win and they play at Buffalo the next week, that will be the highest rated game next weekend. I can guarantee you.
All right. That was Kevin Keatsman yesterday. He's saying that there's going to be empty seats at the game on Saturday. I disagree with Kevin on that because I'm looking on StubHub right now, and you can get into the game on Saturday for $43. You can get into an NFL playoff game on Saturday for $43. Now, you're going to be in Section 317 in the southwest corner, and you're going to be up top, and you're going to be freezing. But let me repeat, you can be at an NFL playoff game in this town for $43 if you want right now. 2 tickets available in Section 317. You can sit in the lower bowl. You can sit in the south end zone for $98. I'm looking at these listings. So I don't think, I mean, there may be a smattering of empty seats, but I don't believe that it's going to be obvious that thousands of people did not want to go to this game because of the weather. I think that, Kansas City Star's written about this. Everyone should be allowed to go to see Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, as if this is like, they should be throwing out tickets on the street corners, right? The Chiefs should not be a business. Well, this is your chance. Now, listen, I'm not saying you bring little kids out in this weather, but if you're somebody who has not seen a Chiefs playoff game or whatever, and you've always wanted to, and don't get me wrong, it's going to be really cold, but this weather may actually work out where a lot of fans who have been priced out from these games in recent years, this is their chance, John. I view this as an opportunity for many.
Kind of back in the day, it was the demand, and once an opening came up, you jumped on it. This is more about price in this economy, too, and at this time.
Yeah, I mean, there are dozens of tickets under $60 to go to an NFL playoff game with the defending Super Bowl champs. Now, you better dress warm, but that's kind of cool, no pun intended, when you think about it. And if you want to find the optimism in this, that's the optimism. I hope there are a lot of people who dress warmly, who have not been able to go to a playoff game, maybe ever, who this is their chance. This is your opportunity. And by the way, there's going to be a bunch of warming centers throughout the stadium, the Chiefs announced yesterday. So there will be opportunities to warm yourself up throughout Arrowhead Stadium on Saturday night. So maybe you take advantage of that. I think that's a pretty cool opportunity for somebody or a lot of people. And the lower bowl, I mean, like I said, under $100, you can get a seat in the lower bowl. How about that?
Everybody would be packed in there like Randy in the Christmas Story, the youngest brother. I can't put my arms down.
Yes.
But actually, the more people that cram into the lower bowl, the warmer it will be.
Exactly.
Right?
Wind will be a little less as well. So, you cut down on some of the wind from being in the 300s upstairs. So there are definitely opportunities. But I'm seeing a lot of people I know on Facebook who are like, hey, I'm selling tickets to the game. But here's what they're doing. They're trying to sell the tickets to the game for like their face value. And guys, you're not going to get that for Saturday. Like I see people that I know who have really good seats, lower bowl, like, front 10 rows behind the Chiefs bench. They're trying to get $400 or $500 a ticket. It's like I can sit there right now on StubHub for $180 if I want to. Literally. I'm looking at StubHub prices here, $217, and I'm sitting in the front 20 rows behind the Chiefs bench. That's pretty damn good for a playoff game. Now, meantime, speaking of sports things in this town, a big report yesterday came down from Jonathan Ketz at Fox 4, who's done a very good job on this story. Unfortunately, for some reason, his bosses won't let him come on the show. So now I've got to talk about his reports. But Jonathan's a great guy. He does a really good job, but his bosses don't want him coming on here to talk about his own reporting. I'm just looking to promote the guy, but whatever. So the Royals are considering this Crossroads site. We know the Royals are now seriously looking at the old Kansas City Star building. And Jonathan Ketz has been leading the way in this town on that reporting. Now, there's a problem, though. And the problem is that the newest mock-up renderings that have been done for this theoretical Royals ballpark at the old Kansas City Star building, which is south side of the downtown loop, just south of Power and Light District, the big glass building. You probably, if you don't know it, you've walked by it probably or driven by it a million times without realizing that's what it is or that's what it was. So the problem is in the renderings, they don't have the Star building as the actual ballpark. They have it to the east of that. And right now, there are businesses there that have not had any conversations with anybody about their location essentially being sold to put a baseball stadium in its place. So here we are 3 months away from a theoretical vote in Jackson County for a new Royals ballpark. It could very well be at that KC Star building site or just due east of it. And the people who are there right now have not heard a peep from anybody about it, John.
Well, it seems kind of new to me, so maybe it doesn't surprise me yet.
Yeah, but you know as well as I do, like if something's just hitting the media, then the Royals have been talking about it, I'm sure, for weeks, if not months, possibly. So if that's the case,
Wait, that was one guy, though, right? I don't know if they got to the other guys on the block yet or
the
not.
Tony
you know what I mean?
Privatera, the owner of the building?
There was a guy that owned a business
Yes.
that was quoted in the
Yes.
thing, and he said, I haven't heard from anybody, and I don't plan to move.
Yes.
You know? And so I'm like, well, that's one.
That's one.
Maybe he's the only one. I don't know.
So I've got the audio of that guy
Okay.
from Fox 4. So let's roll some of this from Jonathan Ketz last night as he was reporting on where we're at with this KC Star site as a potential landing spot for the Royals.
The Old Star Building's owner, Tony Privatera, showed us a drawing of a ballpark not going on his site, but east of it and east of Oak Street. One person who tried to fight that plan if it becomes true is John Pryor, owner of Madison Flitch, a wood store in the Crossroads.
We just simply do not know what the exact footprint of the so-called Crossroads location is. And as business owners, we really need to know that so that we can respond accordingly.
Pryor's family owns the building he's currently in at 16th and Locust. So if the Royals Stadium actually went east of the Star Pavilion and not on it or west of it, their family would have to sell.
The plan has the ballpark right over my building. I've never been talked to once about it.
KCMO and the Royals aren't commenting on Pryor's remarks.
I kind of feel like they didn't tell us the truth when they told us that the Star Building wasn't the viable location. I mean, they told us that several times, and then here we are, and they have a new favorite location, and it's neither North Kansas City or the East Village.
That last person, Jason Withington, Clay County Commissioner, is who you heard from there on the Fox 4 report from Jonathan Ketz. So you got this guy who's like, yeah, I got a business here just east of the Old Star Building, and, you know, no one's talked to me about this. See, that's the problem, though. If there are renderings out and a rendering shows your business as being basically blown up, no longer existing, I think you got a problem there. If you're doing renderings, and in your renderings, you are essentially destroying businesses in the process who have not heard a peep from the Royals or anybody about their business going away or being sold or whatever it might be, maybe that should not be leaking out to the public. It's just another sign that this has been a headache and a disastrous process in large part, and it still is likely to pass. A 3/8 sales tax is still likely to pass in Jackson County in April if we get there. However, it doesn't mean it hasn't been incredibly messy to get to that point. 913-408-7957. I will say, though, the KC Star location is far superior to the East Village location. It's not even close. So if the Royals are smart, that is where they'll go, but they still have a few hurdles to make that happen. Bill Belichick out as the head coach of the New England Patriots. That news coming down this morning after 24 years together. That breaking in the last 15, 20 minutes or so. So big news on that front. 913-408-7957. There are more articles coming out on something happening locally that I have zero sympathy for, and I'm sick of hearing about it. I'll tell you what it is coming up. This is a great year if you're a parent on the Kansas side of the state line with school-age kids. This year begins open enrollment in the state of Kansas for the 2024-2025 school year. That means that you will be able, starting after this school year in May, to start potentially trying to get your child, if it's a good fit for them, into a different school district somewhere in the state. The open enrollment law passed the Kansas legislature in 2022, and it begins this year. Yet all I've seen over the last couple of weeks in statewide media around Kansas is how there are concerns about this. So this came yesterday from the Johnson County Post. The headline was, Kansas school leaders say the shift to open enrollment next fall won't be simple. And to that I say, I don't care. And neither should you. I'm not about simple. I'm about rights. We all should be about what is right and what is in the best interests of all of our children. And I'm sorry if it's not simple for the schools, but simple isn't really the point. The point of public education is to not simplify it. The point is to make sure it's working. And every single year, the state is spending hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, on public education. And making sure that you are running the most efficient and effective system for the kids, not for the simplicity of the adults, should be the goal. The goal should be about making sure that the education of our children is put first and foremost, not about simplicity for adults. So I don't really care how simple it is for Kansas school leaders when they say the shift to open enrollment is not going to be easy or not going to be simple next fall. We should not be in the business of what is simple and what is easy.
There was a simple solution, and that was to take on board input from parents, right?
Yeah. Didn't want to do that.
The easier thing to do.
So some of these headlines, as I'm looking around, I Googled this morning because all I've seen on these headlines is about how, wow, this might not work. Be careful. I Googled Kansas open enrollment just to see some of the stories that would show up here, the top stories that would show up on Google. And just look at these headlines. There's a similar theme to all of these. 2 weeks ago in the Topeka Capital Journal, school choice fights loom as Kansas districts enact open enrollment. The Shawnee Mission Post, the one I just read. Kansas school leaders say open enrollment won't be simple. Woke 41 Action News. It's a double-edged sword. Parents brace for changes as Kansas schools prepare for new open enrollment law. The theme here is the following. Well, this might not work. I don't know if this is a good idea. Oh, boy, this is not going to be easy. This is not going to be simple. Instead of taking the approach of, wow, more choices and more options for students and putting their best interests first and putting their needs first, not the ease and simplicity of the adults who run public education. Wow, that's a great thing for all parents. That's a great thing for families in the state of Kansas. I know families who are eagerly counting down to the time when they can start their open enrollment and they can get their kids out of their current public schools and hopefully get them into a different public school that might be better suited for them. I personally know people who cannot wait for that to come in May and June. And you know what? If it doesn't affect you, if you're happy where you are, then guess what? Nothing's going to change for you. There's no downside here outside of more work for administrators, which, sorry, if it benefits the kids, then we should be doing that anyway, John.
Some of these, or many of the Kansas schools already have students who don't live in the district who are skirting the issue anyway, right?
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Then it becomes an issue, too, of how many spaces do you have in your school? So now what are we talking about? It's not like every kid in the school now is up in the air. Where do I go?
No.
There's only a certain amount of spots available in this whole situation.
Correct.
Depending on where you want to go.
Yeah.
So
I mean, people I know who want to leave their district are looking for smaller school districts, right? Like if you're, let's say, a cop in KCK, you got to live in Wyandotte County. But maybe you want a smaller school district for your kid. So you can drive a little bit further and you can now open enroll them in a smaller school district that you think might be better for their educational experience. It's going to be very unique, specific circumstances. Maybe your kid has special education needs. And there are certain schools that do a better job of that than others based on parents that you've talked to in the special education community. That's who in large part this can be for. It's not like, to John's point, every kid's going to be like, where do I go next year? I'm going to lose all my friends. What do I do? No, it's going to be the schools who will determine how many more kids they can take based on enrollment numbers, report they've got, let's say, 25 openings, and then they'll figure out which kids they can ultimately take. They won't have to bus them. The kids will have to get themselves to the school on their own. They're not responsible for picking them up at their front door. But for parents where it's important enough for them to move their kids out of their current situation, maybe it's bullying related, right? I mean, we see way too much of that because now bullying is on social media. Maybe you want a different change of pace, new scenery, smaller school, whatever it might be. You now have options as a parent. You are not stuck in the school that you're in because of your zip code. In what has become as antiquated a policy as there has ever been, which is public education based on your zip code. Kansas is now opening it up a little bit. with open enrollment. And the only headlines you see from local media and regional media is, oh boy, this is going to create issues for school districts. That from KSN TV. Open enrollment could create issues for Kansas schools. Shawnee Mission Post won't be simple. Woke 41 Action News. It's a double-edged sword. How about just celebrating wins for parents? Because, yes, there is school choice right now if you got the money to pay for private school. But look up the cost of private school these days, anywhere in the region. It's at least a few grand a year. And a lot of people can't afford that. So how about we do a little round of applause for parents who are now able to try to get their kids into a different school. Good for them. But the media doesn't want to tell you that. Coming up, I'll give you the debate recaps from last night. You had CNN doing a Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis debate. You had Trump doing a town hall. Quite a 1-2 punch going on last night on cable news. We'll get to it next, right after the news on 95.7 FM KCMO. Last night I was all over the map in my TV watching. Actually, it was just a weird night in general. Not weird, just, a lot of things happened last night. I'm watching KU, what I thought was going to be a blowout, taking on UCF in basketball. KU's up like 16 points with 4 minutes left in the first half. They end up losing the game. It was a great second half, and I say that from the sense of a basketball perspective. It was a great second half. I didn't like the fact that KU lost necessarily, but it was a great half of basketball, back and forth down the stretch. So KU ends up losing to UCF, which nobody saw coming. And right after that game ended, it was probably like 8:15, the game ends. And I'm like, okay. I'll go and check out the dopey debates and town halls going on. Once again, this primary process has not had the juice just because, you got a former president running and running away with it as well in Donald Trump. So it's not your typical, hey, presidential primary year, woohoo, let's focus on everything going on day by day. It's just, it's what it is. So you got Nikki Haley debating Ron DeSantis on CNN in what looked like the undercard. And I'm doing this, by the way, as I'm massaging the feet of my pregnant wife, because that's the kind of husband I am. It was a long day. We're heading down the home stretch. She asked for a little help with the feet. And you know what? I'm not a big foot guy, but when duty calls, I can step up to the plate. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here. I'm just letting you know blow by blow how my night was going. So I'm massaging pregnant feet as I'm watching this debate between Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. And the first thing I see, I literally turn it on. It's like 8:15. And the headline is screaming on CNN. And I posted this on my Twitter last night at Pete Mundo. The headline is screaming on CNN the following question. And this was the minute I knew I tuned into a big mistake. Would working families pay the same tax rate as billionaires under the DeSantis flat tax plan? So Ron DeSantis, a fan of flat taxes, a flat income tax. And it's a bogus, nonsensical trick question, right? Because an income tax is what you make off of a job. No one makes $1 billion a year. Billionaires are people who are, entrepreneurs. They've sold businesses. They don't make $1 billion. You don't get a W-2 that says, oh, here's, $1,275,347. And that's not how it works when you're a billionaire. Now, CNN knows this, but they don't care. And CNN asked Ron DeSantis about his flat tax, and DeSantis' answer was awful. I mean, I really like this guy. I had huge hopes for him, but his answer was awful. This was an opportunity for him to use his smarts, his shrewdness, and a little bit of Trumpness by beating up on the media, but doing it maybe in a smarter, more effective manner and different from Trump. You can't out-Trump Trump, right? But you can do it in a way that kind of mocks the media and knocks the media. And DeSantis had an opportunity to do that. And this is not the reason that he's been such a bust, but it's one of the reasons. This was an opportunity to say to CNN, come on. I mean, this whole are the teachers going to pay more than the billionaires? This is when you call them out and you say, guys, that's disingenuous. Income tax, no one makes $1 billion a year. Billionaires make their money off things like capital gains, and talking about the capital gains rate is different than talking about the income tax. So let's be honest with the American people. That's the way you answer it if you're Ron DeSantis. Instead, he kind of went on this strange, meandering answer that didn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Support a flat tax, which is a single income tax rate for every American. Under your plan, would working families pay the same tax rate as billionaires?
I would only do it if people are better off than they are now. I mean, I want people paying less taxes. Actually, if you think the last year we have numbers for,
I would only do it if people are better off than they are now, says Ron DeSantis when asked that question. Call out the media for being disingenuous with the question. And by the way, if you support a flat tax, then theoretically you've done your homework enough, Ron DeSantis, to know whether or not it benefits people. Like, which one is it?
the federal government took in the highest percentage of taxes from the economy since World War II, and yet they're going deep into debt. We have a spending problem in this country.
Okay,
it's not
yes,
a tax problem
yes,
in this country.
yes,
and if you had something that was simple and transparent, not only would that be better for economic growth, it's also better to end the weaponization of government. The IRS has been weaponized against conservatives going back to the Obama administration. I was there for that. No one's been held accountable for doing that. You look at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Justice. The weaponization of federal power ends the day I become the president of the United States. There's going to be a new sheriff in town. We're going to restore the constitutional accountability that our founding fathers envisioned when they formatted the Constitution. And, I've talked to folks who have overbearing federal agencies, who have the EPA coming on their farmland because there's maybe a puddle there, waters of the United States. Give me a break. So we're going to reduce the size of government.
Sir, this is a Wendy's. Somehow Ron DeSantis gets asked about a flat tax, and he's talking about puddles on farmland and the EPA by the end of it. What the hell was that, Ron? I mean, I really like the guy. I had huge hopes for him. As an Italian-American, he would have been the first Italian-American president. So, there was that part of it, too, that I secretly appreciated, potentially. Instead, he gets asked a trick question by CNN. And by the way, I agree with the idea of a flat tax. We don't need another 80,000 IRS agents. Create a flat tax. It's a win for most people who hold jobs and work. Simplify the government. I think it's a great idea. But that is a quintessential example of how Ron DeSantis has just missed the mark at every turn. The resume is great. The ability to sell himself to the people of Iowa, New Hampshire, here in Kansas and Missouri and America has been an utter failure. Everyone always says, no one's Trump. No one's got Trump's charisma and funny lines, and that is true. There's never going to be, at least probably not in my lifetime, another Donald Trump. But it's not just that Ron DeSantis wasn't Donald Trump and isn't Donald Trump. It's that he's also been his own worst enemy on trying to message decent policy. He gets asked about a flat tax. It's a trick question by CNN. You have a great opportunity to set the record straight, call them out, which Republican primary voters are going to love if you take a little dig at CNN in the process, and effectively explain the benefits of a flat tax. And a minute in, he's talking about farmers and the EPA and puddles. And I'm just sitting there like, what are we doing here? What is going on?
What are we talking about?
Even Biden's confused. 7:13. It is great to be here on a Thursday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. Quentin Lucas, bottom of the hour. Nikki Haley was on the stage last night. She got a big lift because Chris Christie dropped out of the race. But still, until proven otherwise, obviously this thing is Donald Trump's to lose. But there's one little thing. And we're going to talk to Jeff Angelo next hour just to our north up in Iowa. He's a radio host there on WHO. Just get a sense and a lay of the land of what exactly is happening. But there is one thing that could make Donald Trump a loser on Monday in Iowa, even if he ends up winning. I'll explain what that is next on 95.7 FM KCMO. To me, the most influential show of a generation came out 25 years ago this week. Technically, the first episode aired 25 years ago last night. So I threw it out there at 913-408-7957. I said, let me see what the responses are on the text line. I think the best response that we got here was MASH.
Whoops.
MASH came out September of 72, John.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's...
And it was a movie before then.
That's
going... the movie was out.
That's going back a long... Well, the TV... You're right.
Yeah, TV series was a few years after the movie.
Yes. So, I mean, this is going way back. A lot
the
of
TV series lasted longer than the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, the most popular guess, and it's a good guess, but it's wrong, was Seinfeld. Seinfeld came out in 89, so that's going back 35 years now. Some of you did get the answer right on the text line, 913-408-7957, and it was The Sopranos. Sopranos' first episode of season 1 was 25 years ago last night. And, it started off, I guess, as kind of a cultural show for New York, New Jersey Italians, but then it became a nationwide hit. And it's not a regional show. If you watch it, it's become one of the most popular shows in modern American TV history.
Mm-hmm. Contextually speaking, then, back then, it was HBO and,
yes.
I'm blanking out
Stars.
on the others, right? Well, they would create the programming in the series, so there were a whole bunch of things, and they'd be on for a couple of years, and this was like one of the next new cable series to get hooked on, right? So it was in there with a whole bunch of good shows that certainly rose above the others.
Yeah, it did. Now, when you look at the show and its historical influence, first off, it was the start of I don't need to watch broadcast TV anymore to get good programming.
Maybe that's kind of what I was alluding to, too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was really about looking at the show and saying, wow, I have other options. I don't have to watch ER on NBC. I don't have to watch Seinfeld on NBC. Wow, HBO is producing really good programming. It was the first ever wave of kind of, it wasn't streaming, obviously, but it was great television from your couch, not going to a movie theater, on something outside of, traditional cable or broadcast television. And then the other part of it that culturally is very significant is it was the first time you had not the first time, but certainly the most prominent examples of popular actors getting killed in shows. Now, you look at today's world, and it happens in every show. Yellowstone, Ozark. I mean, now you go back to Breaking Bad. Now, if major characters aren't dying in the shows, you're like, when's this guy going to die? When's he going to get whacked? What's going to happen here? Sopranos kind of led the way in that new wave of drama where you kind of were waiting for somebody prominent in the show to, use a Sopranos term, get whacked. Now, I didn't watch it because you go back 25 years. I mean, I'm in middle school at that point, so I'm not watching The Sopranos. I didn't watch it till about probably 8 to 10 years ago when Kate and I just put it on and burnt right through it, and it truly is the best television I've ever seen. And it holds up, by the way. It's not like Seinfeld doesn't hold up because a lot of the Seinfeld things could have been fixed with a smartphone. But The Sopranos holds. It's true. I mean, all the issues that, Jerry ran into or George ran into or Kramer or any of them in Seinfeld, you could fix today with a smartphone. So it doesn't really hold up. Sopranos holds up. So when you watch it now, and there's this whole new generation of young people that are now watching Sopranos on HBO. It's like this movement with Gen Z where they're all kind of getting into Sopranos, and there's podcasts around it and everything else, which is pretty cool. It holds up in a way a lot of shows may not from that time. And I think about it, too, going back 25 years now, all I remember from the show as a kid, my dad, an Italian-American, refused to watch it because he thought it made Italian-Americans look bad. He thought it was all about, everyone thinks these Italian guys, everyone's in the mob and everyone's, whacking each other. And
fed into stereotypes.
It fed into a lot of Italian stereotypes. Mm-hmm. So he hated the idea of the show. But he also watched it after I watched it about 10 years ago, and now he also thinks it's one of the best television shows ever. So we've all gotten over it. But 25 years ago, last night, one of the most culturally important television shows for a multitude of reasons in terms of how we watch TV and in terms of how it changed drama series for the last 25 years. It all began with David Chase and The Sopranos. And by the way, rest in peace to James Gandolfini. And we'll never know what happened in that final episode. I'm still not convinced that Tony was whacked. I'm not. But maybe that's just me being a sucker. People who are not suckers include Megan Marshall. She is the vice chair of the Jackson County legislature. She is set to join us here on KCMO Talk Radio right after the top of the hour. Get the latest on a busy week in Jackson County with the sports teams, how this deal got done, how it still might, potentially be on the fence a little bit. And then we're going to go to Des Moines. Jeff Angelo, WHO Radio at 8:30. The Iowa caucuses are on Monday. And Mike Golick will be here at 9 o'clock. Formerly a Mike and Mike. Get his perspective on Chiefs-Dolphins right here. Busy hour and a half, 2 hours left on KCMO. So disappointing because now we got to wait another 4 years. I don't think we're getting any presidential debates in the general. I doubt that's going to happen. These primary debates have, generally speaking, been busts because the guy in the lead isn't doing them. And I kind of like to, every 4 years enjoy geeking out and watching these things. Kind of like, I don't know, the Ryder Cup in golf. You get it every couple of years. John's rolling his eyes at me, of course. He's looking to watch a soccer game, or is it a match this weekend? So it's just the first thing that came to mind. That's not an annual event that I just enjoy watching. But we haven't had them. Like last night, there was a debate, air quotes, but I didn't even watch it at the start. I was watching KU-UCF basketball on ESPN Plus at, after the kids went to bed. I watched UCF pull off the upset, and then I'm like, I guess I'll put on the debates.
Yeah, the debates, this primary thing, kind of mirroring the bowl season.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Well, the starter's not going to be there.
You're right.
Now
that's a good analogy.
Let's get over that.
Yeah.
Let's get beyond that.
So you got DeSantis and Nikki Haley doing this debate last night on CNN. Then you got Trump doing this town hall on Fox, conveniently right up against Nikki Haley and DeSantis. I'll be curious to see what the ratings end up being for both of those last night. But, I haven't really seen a lot of Trump. I'm not going to I'm not going to stream rallies from Iowa. With all due respect, everyone knows what Trump is. Either love him, you hate him. There's not many people on the fence about him. His stuff is still entertaining. He's still entertaining, but I don't need to see a rally in Iowa because you've seen one, you've seen most of them. And that's not meant to be an insult. It's just, you get the same lines. It's kind of like a stand-up comedian. You go see it once and, then maybe you'll come back around for another tour in a few years. But for the most part, you've seen it, right? But I flip on the debate. That's a bust on CNN. I'm like, all right, I'll go see what Trump's doing on Fox and flip that on. And it's a town hall, so he's getting asked questions by people in Iowa. And one lady asked him a really interesting question on abortion. Now, remember, abortion is now a state issue with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And Trump gets asked about it. And I thought his answer was one of the better answers he's given on a very nuanced topic, an issue, and let's be honest, a controversial one at that as well. If you were to listen to him talk, and remember, people have what they believe in their heads to be, what they think Trump is all about. But listen to this answer where he walks the fine line of saying, these are my beliefs, but at the same time, you have to win elections. And the proof's in the pudding the last 2 years. Since Roe got overturned, anytime Democrats get the abortion issue on the ballot, or they're able to run on the abortion issue, they win. Trump recognizes that. So here was his answer to that question last night.
I'd like for you to reassure me that you can protect all life, every person's right to life, without compromise.
So that's a great question. I appreciate it, too. You wouldn't be asking that question, even talking about the issue, because for 54 years they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it. They wanted to get it back, right? You wouldn't have that. There would be no question. Nobody else was going to get that done but me.
Yeah.
And we did it, and we did something that was a miracle. When I walked onto the stage today, a gentleman in the back, probably works for Fox, nice guy, said, "Sir, I'd like to thank you." I said, "For what?" He said, "You saved 2 million lives in the last 3 years. You saved 2 million lives." And I said, "Thank you very much." I knew exactly what he meant. 2 million lives. And nobody's done more in that regard than me. Now, I happen to be for the exceptions, like Ronald Reagan, with the life of the mother, rape, incest. I just have to be there. I think probably 78% or so, Paul, about 78%. It was Ronald Reagan. He was for it. I was for it. But I will say this. You have to win elections. Otherwise, you're going to be back where you were. And you can't let that ever happen again. You've got to win elections. If you look at it, Ron DeSantis, I don't know what he really believes because, you never know with a politician, and he's just another politician as far as I'm concerned. But his poll numbers have gone down to a level that he's going to be out of the race very soon. He's going to be out very soon. I watched him last night. He's standing up with his shoes, his fancy shoes.
All right, that's enough. I just haven't heard him speak in a while since last night. Last night was the first time I've heard him speak in that kind of a setting in a really long time. And he's still kind of got all those little isms about him. But, he brings up a good point. Now, he starts off a little shaky. He's like, no one else could have got this done but me. I mean, he got lucky. He was able to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices in 4 years. That's luck, good fortune as much as anything else. But beyond that, he talks about the exceptions. And his point was, even if morally you don't agree with it, and that's up for you to decide, you cannot win elections on it. You can't. And it's a very important point for him to bring up and for anybody to recognize right now. That's why he mentions the exceptions. And he says, if you don't look at it from that perspective, you will never win again. So it's this fine line between having a moral belief on something, but then also admitting if you stay too pure to that belief when it comes to politics, you will end up losing. And that's essentially what he's saying there. And he's right to point that out. The only other thing I thought he should have mentioned in that answer is, if some person in Iowa says, hey, how do I know you're going to protect life? Well, I think the overriding answer as well is it's not really up to me anymore. What I did is basically appoint the right Supreme Court justices who then basically handed the issue back to the states. And I know nothing's going to get done federally on this issue. It is now back in the hands of the states themselves to handle. And I think that's a big point that's got to be hit on as well. It's not a federal issue anymore. And for the most part, that's a good thing that it's not a federal issue anymore. But I think that point has to be hit home. But Trump bringing up the realities of the political ramifications of all this based off of how the last 2 years have gone since Roe got overturned, which was a great thing. But then you also have to admit that when that issue is on the ballot, well, it's helped the other folks a lot more than it's helped you. There's no denying that. That's a fact. You can't dispute it. That's not an opinion. It's a fact. We'll go up to Iowa, and we'll see what's going on there. The latest with Jeff Angelo, WHO radio host in Des Moines. And then we've got some new inflation numbers, plus Mike Golick at 9.